All right. Well, once again, thank you for making time to spend a little bit of time learning about the Teaching Artist Roster program with us today. This program is one of CMAB's programs that we offer to artists that isn't an award-based program. It's based on an application process, and then we invite artists to participate in a 7-session training course. So today I'm here to tell you a little bit about the history of the program, the intent, what artists and participants can expect to gain from participating, and then of course leave a lot of time for you to ask questions or get specifics. We find that the nature of this program can be, it sort of eludes a really clean couple of sentence description to really clearly communicate to folks what it is. And a couple of reasons for that are that we work to keep the program small, meaning we serve a small number of artists in any given cohort, and that's so that we can be nimble. We want the program to sort of help to support you in growing where you need to grow. Danielle, what you said in introductions was perfect, because when artists tell us, like, this is what I'm looking for, this is what I really need, then we make notes and we make sure that the program offers you support in those ways so that we can help you move along. Because part of what we're here to recognize is that our regional artists have lots and lots and lots of awesome things to share, but sometimes maybe you're missing the connections to find places to teach and share your work. Or maybe you have done a lot of teaching, but you don't have formal training in pedagogy. So something like communicating to a school administrator or putting together a formal lesson plan is something you don't have experience doing. And so we aim to make the program sort of fit to fill those gaps for people. But back to the reason why we have a specific session just to talk about it, sometimes that makes it a little trickier to explain. So that's what I'm here to try and do for you today. This program started back in 2011. So now I guess we're approaching last year would have been our 10th anniversary, but we stopped holding sessions every year many years ago. So this year will probably be the 7th or 8th iteration of the Teaching Artist Roster program. Back in 2011, when our program started, the initial impetus for it was conversations between staff at the Paramount Center for the Arts and CMAB about how within central Minnesota, it seemed to be difficult to find local artists to provide teaching experiences in schools specifically. Schools were reporting a reduced number of artist residencies. CMAB was seeing fewer applications. And part of that, part of what the rationale that was given for that is that there was a perception that it's really expensive to get teaching artists to come because they're coming from the Twin Cities or further away. But staff at CMAB and the Paramount knew that we have a rich resource of local artists and teachers right here in our region. Some of you are sitting on this call today. Many of those folks have been through the program in the previous year. So again, in the spirit of finding and bridging gaps, we said, okay, we need to find a way to empower and network and give our local artists the tools to provide those arts learning experiences here in our region. And that's that conversation led to conversations with the McKnight Foundation, who said, yeah, this is something we'd like to put our support behind. If you're not familiar, the McKnight Foundation has several sort of areas where they focus their foundation's funding. And one of them is specifically towards individual artists. McKnight trusts individual artists to make creative decisions and to find the things that will help communities be vibrant and to thrive. And so in the spirit of that kind of support, McKnight says yes. Programs that are helping artists to offer more of what they do with the community are things that we are here to support. So the pilot program began in 2011. At that time, the program was led by Jane Oxton, who was the education outreach coordinator at the Paramount Center for the Arts at the time. Jane also taught within the St. Cloud School District for many, many years and was the arts integration coordinator back in the golden days when St. Cloud School District had an arts magnet school. I think it was Jefferson Elementary on the east side of St. Cloud, which was before my time living in central Minnesota. In collaboration with Jane, we engaged what were called peer mentors, so artists from the Perpich Center for Arts Education located in the Twin Cities. In the years since, that program has sort of shifted in leadership from Jane and the Perpich mentors to Jane and myself, and now Alicia and I work to offer that programming together for you. I am so proud and grateful to get to work with Alicia, because I think our skills and our knowledge bases complement each other really well, specifically within the context of this program. I have some, albeit distant now within my career, I have some of those scrappy independent contractor stories where I learned hard lessons because I didn't insist on a contract or things like that. Alicia has really rich and specific information about pedagogy and a connection to arts education within our region because of her role at St. Ben's, and also because I don't know how many years, but you worked as a K-12 art teacher for many years, plenty of years.
17.
17.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a good friend who grew up with you as their art teacher, and she's told me before, I don't know if I could say hi. She's like a celebrity to me.
Oh. Who is it?
Her name, well, I will tell you after the recording.
Okay.
Okay. Recording.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so back to the program. As I mentioned in the earlier introduction, we aim to have the Teaching Artist Roster program really be something that helps artists, either sometimes who have lots of experience with teaching, or artists all the way to artists who are relatively new or inexperienced with teaching, to find ways to connect with more audiences. Now, a couple of you mentioned wanting to work with kids, and that's great, but it's also important to note that this program isn't aimed only for artists who want to work with kids. We believe in artists sharing their work, their motives, the things that excite them with learners of all ages. So that may mean you're working with pre-K kids. It may mean you're going to adult day centers or working in senior centers, or you're working with the city council. It's really up to you who your audience is and where it is you want to share your work. So the program now, as it will begin this year, is composed of 7 3-hour training sessions. It's scheduled to take place on Thursday evenings between April and June. We don't have more specifics besides, I think, 6 to 9 are the scheduled times in the evenings. We don't have a location specifically right now, and that's also intentional because we look at where our applicants come from. So the Central Minnesota Arts Board serves Benton, Sherburne, Stearns, and Wright County, and we aim to make our programming accessible. And then, of course, there's the pandemic that we're navigating. So there are some things that we'll have to sort out in terms of location. But what we do in terms of trying to make things accessible is we will reimburse you if you're driving or using transportation to go to where our sessions are. So if a session is held in Buffalo or Monticello and you're coming from St. Cloud, you would be eligible for a mileage reimbursement, or we would figure out rideshare or that sort of thing. And part of why we would like to potentially hold trainings in different places in the region is to make sure that maybe if we have groups who are from different places in the region, you can all we can mitigate some of those travel barriers, so you're not having to drive an hour for every single session or the other way around. And then also because in the spirit of connecting artists with different places where you may want to share your work or meet fellow teaching artists or that sort of thing, we like to introduce you to different hubs within our region. As the Arts Board, we're very lucky to know and work with arts organizations all over our 4 counties who are actively recruiting artists to help them to offer their programming, working with artists on public art, or a whole variety of things. So part of what we hope to do, pandemic willing, is to hold our training in various locations around the region so you have a chance to be introduced to new places and learn about some different hubs. It's exciting, you know, knowing I'm working with a couple like St. Cloud or northern portions of our region artists. There are some really exciting places down in Monticello and Buffalo that you may not be connected to that could offer more experiences in terms of teaching opportunities and that sort of thing. So know that by the time you are approaching, if you apply to the program and are accepted, well before those April training dates begin, you will have much more specific and detailed information about where those sessions will be held, etc. And we always work to be accessible, so we'll work with you to make sure that the people who are participating have easy access to get there. And of course, we want you to walk away feeling like this program is worth your time. So you'll hear me say over and over again, network, network, network. But in the time that I've spent in arts programming in our region, and a lot of successful teaching artists will tell you that who you know and where you're connected is a big part of success and opportunities. So we always aim to give you opportunities to meet new folks, to introduce your work to different organizations, to work with other artists and that sort of thing, because we think it makes us all better and stronger around the region. And then we offer opportunities for artists to market and promote their work. That looks like a few different things. Of course, as we continue to navigate a pandemic that is maybe becoming endemic, we'll see what the future holds. Those opportunities are kind of in flux right now, but we continue to find ways to market and promote teaching artists within the reality we have to navigate now. Another thing that artists who participate in or who complete the Teaching Artist Roster program have is exclusive access to a program called the Teaching Artist Grant. So I talked about acceptance into the Teaching Artist Roster program being something that isn't a financial award. You don't receive a check if you're accepted into the TARP program. But once you complete the program, you do have exclusive access, meaning only folks who have completed the Teaching Artist Roster program are eligible to apply to a program we offer through CMAB called the Teaching Artist Grant. Now, this program is unique because you as an individual can apply for funds to produce an arts learning experience in a place. These grants are up to $2,000, and you hypothetically what happens is you partner with a school or an organization, you plan a project, and then you can apply for those funds to receive a bit of funding to make it happen. And as I mentioned earlier in our discussion, those funds can go to support work in a whole variety of settings. And some of the photos that you see here are some examples of things that have happened specifically through that program. So I'll tell you a little bit about what support and promotion has looked like for this program pre-pandemic, knowing that you're all creative thinkers who have a tolerance for some amount of ambiguity, because we don't know exactly what those opportunities look like as we move into the future. So previously we would hold annual artist showcases. It's almost like a science fair for teaching artists, where you show your student work or the work that you make. You talk about what you'd like to teach to students, who you want to work with. And then we invite teachers, activity coordinators, etc., to come to a place. We feed them snacks, and then they can walk around and meet with you, and maybe you decide to work together and plan a grant in the future. Of course, we're not doing programming like that now. Perhaps in 6 months, we will have the opportunity to do so, and then we'll resume that sort of thing. But right now, what ongoing support and promotion looks like are perhaps email opportunities to apply to join the Compass roster, which is another statewide organization that promotes and places artists. Or it may mean that somebody contacts me about an artist who does embroidery and makes sensory books. And I say, you know what, I know an artist named Kelly. I'm personally a fan of her work. and I can connect you. That's one of the benefits of sort of like being within that network, is we know what you're doing. And so at the arts board, when we're getting lots and lots of calls, or in the work Alicia does, where community folks are contacting her, we're able to know about you and have a source through the CMAB website to direct people to more information about you. Now, it's important when I say those things about ongoing support and promotion that I also distinguish what this program is not. And what it is not is we don't represent artists. We're not working to place you in residencies or connect you with specific work. We help to promote and connect you with opportunities, but you still operate as an independent contractor to dictate the terms of the work that you do, what you get paid, when you work, who your audiences are and what you need. And then also you take responsibility for making connections and following through on things like that. So what you gain from participation in the program is the ability to be listed on the CMAB website and what's called our teaching artist roster. Once I get through a few more slides, I'm going to go on our website and I'll show you specifically where it's located and a little bit about how it works. But this is kind of the primary promotional tool that we give you. Some artists or teaching artists maybe don't have their own website, and this gives you sort of an online presence connected to a reputable regional organization to say like, hey, I have a profile listed on this roster. If you want to learn more about me and the work I've done, you can go here. It also gives us a way when somebody says, hey, I'm looking for a teaching artist, I don't know exactly what I want to do. We say, okay, well, start here, and you can look at a dozen or 18 different artists from our region and learn a little bit about what they do. And then their contact information is right in there, and so people can contact you directly to make things happen that way. Our applications are online, although we are always happy to find a way to make a paper application accessible or work with you over the phone if there are things you need in order to make application accessible to you. After we get through these next couple of slides, I'm going to go online and I'll show you again specifically where you can find that application. And time permitting, we'll walk through the application a little bit too. But the things you need if you are planning to apply specifically are some work samples. So digital, audio, video images of the work that you do. And then you'll need to be thinking a little bit about, if you are a teacher, describing a lesson or a teaching experience you would like to offer. And if you haven't done a lot of teaching, same question. Think about a teaching experience that you'd like to offer, or how you might share something about your work that you think is interesting or important. And my question slide should come after we walk through the program. So I'm going to stop sharing real quick here. Are there questions on those things while I pull up our application and our website? You're welcome to unmute and ask questions, or you can also drop things in the chat at any point.
The one thing I did want to say, when Danielle was talking about, not knowing how to package that's what we do so much. I think that was the perfect way to describe that. We really explore that, like, what does my package look like? What is my, what do we call it? The elevator pitch? What is that thing that I can put out there as a product for people to pay for me to come in and do what I love? And I think that was a really great way to say that, because that feels like what we do from day one. It's, let's explore what you do, let's grow what you do, let's look at what you do, let's see how that can be something that you can market and sell to be a teaching artist. Yeah, so I thought that was a great way to put that.
I agree. And it's always, you're just going to hear me say it over and over again, network, network, network. It's part of the beauty of working in cohort with other artists who are in the program at the same time, and then also connecting to artists who have been through the program previously or other teaching artists in the region. Seeing how other people approach that is so informative, and sometimes it can, outside of the context of like a training series, it can be intimidating to ask, but we'll do that for you. We'll ask for you, and you can see how other people take a run at that sort of thing. All right, so now I have our website pulled up. Let me share my screen. So this is the CMAB website. Melissa, maybe you would just throw our website in the chat for the benefit of our audience. And I'll show you a couple of things. So first, I'm going to show you where the teaching artist roster is located. Under resources, here at the top of our screen. Will someone nod just to make sure you're seeing? Yep, we're good. Okay, cool. So when I click on the teaching artist roster, this is where people who are interested in partnering with teaching artists, you yourself as a teaching artist, if you're just trying to do a little research on how people present themselves, can go to get information about various teaching artists. But I can scroll down just to show you a little bit. Here we go. About our different teaching artists. So at the top of the page, we have a little description of, why these artists are listed on this particular page, what they have access to. And then of course a disclaimer, we don't conduct background checks. So if you end up working in a school or that sort of thing, there may be an additional cost associated with clearing a background check. But so here you can see artists from our region listed with their mediums. And then a little bit, we ask them, what's the prompt that we ask them? How do you like to nurture creativity or something like that? So you'll see different little intro paragraphs. And something else you'll notice is that we have artists working in a whole variety of disciplines, from dance and performance to music, to visual arts disciplines in many, many different mediums. And that's intentional, right? Like, we want this to be a place where people from around the region can come and say, oh, I hadn't even thought about having a public art, an artist who specializes in public art come to talk about this sort of thing. Or, we're looking for somebody to help us, deal with this truckload of fibers that were donated, or that sort of thing. So if you are thinking about this training and you don't see your discipline or medium represented in this list, that's a good thing. We really, really want you on the list then, because you add value. But likewise, if you make work, similar to somebody else listed, I'm sure that there are plenty of different angles that come for any artist. So this is just to sort of demonstrate that we have a variety of folks from around the region. Melissa does such a great job of making this such an inviting page to peruse. And of course, everyone submits these beautiful photos. So I just feel like, oh gosh, we need to get this group back together. I love all these people.
Click through on one of them once, Heather, so you can see our detail page.
I plan to. Who should we look at? Let's go to Lisa Myers. I think she's got some good stuff.
I was thinking the same thing. All these wonderful people, I missed it. Oh, that person, I wonder how they're doing. And you're right. It's just, everybody's so unique and comes with so many different backgrounds that it adds to the networking and the discussion really deeply.
Yep. Yep. And you gain access to this. These are people we encourage you to connect with, within or without the program. But you become part of a community with these artists through joining the Teaching Artist Roster program too. So here's Lisa's specific artist page, and you see here one of my favorite things that Lisa teaches. She's a writer and an artist, visual artist, and has done a lot of work with visual journaling, which is one example you'll see down here. Storytelling. Lisa's worked as a journalist and is published in a lot of pretty reputable journals. I'm doing a poor job of explaining just how deep her experience goes. But what you get on a page like this is an opportunity to, within a short period of time, learn a little bit about an artist. And then of course, Lisa's in charge of the ways that she shares her contact information for folks to get in touch with her. And like I said earlier, sometimes people will just come to this page and find her all by themselves without having talked with anybody at CMAB. And sometimes I'll have a conversation with a teacher or a community director or a community ed person. And I'll say, you know, this sounds like something that this particular artist would be a really good fit for. Here's how you find them. So this is a really good place to spend some time if you're thinking about whether this program is something that you'd like to participate in or apply to. And I would say one thing I don't want you to do is to look at these artists and judge or compare yourself to them, because I assure you that the experiences that you have and bring would only add depth and value to this. All right, so let's look a little bit at the grant application itself. Let me stop sharing really quickly.
I would say, I know I've mentioned this too, you know, not to overthink it too much, that it's and I do this all the time. Like I have this imposter syndrome, like I'm not supposed to be here. When are they going to figure out I'm not supposed to be doing this job and they're going to fire me or so, you know, and we've had some pretty fantastic conversations in TARP about that and how, you know, how we compare ourselves to each other and what we see as artists. When we had a big discussion one evening, I remember, just about what artist means to each one of us, and we came up with a different definition. And those, I think Dane and Kelly both know Shane. He helped us come up with what that part of that, you know, about the being a maker, and it isn't just the, what do you say, the beret and the mustache and looking at the art kind of artist, but it's more than that. And I think coming with like not knowing and unsure, all that is so welcomed and valuable to all of us, because the vulnerability around that is beautiful in TARP. It really is. And it's been exciting to work with people that come and even I would say the majority of them are just like, gosh, we don't know what we're doing. We want to do something and we don't know what it is. And the discussions around that are quite awesome. And that we take time for those, you know, because they're important as artists for sure.
Thank you for saying that. That's such a good additional point to make. So I talk about networking, but also safety, right? Because we want to create a space where you can grow. And sometimes if I need to address something or learn how to change my practice, I have to feel safe enough to even acknowledge that. And then if I'm brave enough to like acknowledge that to peers that I admire, and two of them are like, oh yeah, me too. All of a sudden I feel so much, I'm getting goosebumps right now, because all of a sudden I'm like so much more empowered to claim the title of teaching artist, or say like, no, I'm actually worth this much an hour, or those things like that. So that's, I'm so proud that we get to create a space and a program that lifts artists up in that way. So it's important for all of you who may be considering participating to hear that, because that stuff is welcome, and not every space welcomes that, but we really believe that in order to be able to grow or learn or eventually, you know, maybe mentor your peers, you got to have a safe place to bring those things. And, you know, worst case scenario, maybe it is a weakness or a gap, and then we'll figure out how to help you navigate that or mitigate it together. So please apply. I will also mention this program historically has not been extremely competitive, and that's okay. We're looking for small cohorts, usually somewhere between about 6 and 10 participants. And we often have had years where we don't turn anybody away who applies, because really the more artists from different disciplines and different lived experiences that we have on our roster, the richer a catalog of experiences that we have to offer our region will be. I'm going to show you a couple things on our website about navigating the application itself. And if you have an account with us, you're going to enter your email address and password in order to log in. If you don't have an account, you're going to click here to create a new account, and it's going to ask you for a bunch of information You go through a couple screens. You only need to answer the starred questions. This tax ID number, you won't have to worry about as an individual artist, so you can just put in a placeholder, which is this number right here. Okay, so you click through, and then when you have an account, if you log in, oh, it kicked me out. Okay, so when you log into your account, you should see a screen that looks like this, applicant dashboard. So I want to find a program to apply to. So I'm going to click this button up top that says apply. And now I have a list of all of the grant programs that are available from CMAB right now. I'm interested in the Teaching Artist Roster program, so I'm going to scroll down. Here's that program. All of our programs have, again, a little description, so you can double check and make sure you're looking at the right program. Information about who can apply. This is an important point to make. This program is available to people in Region 7W, right? So you need to live in Benton, Sherburne, Stearns, or Wright County. In the case of this program, for a minimum of 6 months prior to application. And then you need to be a citizen or have resident status. So this is the program I want. I'm going to click apply. And now I have the application in front of me. This is the form that you complete to submit. Now, what I'm going to do for the next probably 10 minutes or so is I'm just going to walk through and kind of talk a little bit about each of these questions and what's required. And I will encourage you to interrupt me if you have a question specific to any part of this application as we go. So don't be shy. You can raise a hand emoji, you can just unmute and chat, or you can drop a comment in the chat. So we'll just walk through the questions in the application. The first question we have is why you're interested in participating. And full transparency, a big reason we ask this question is to help us in our planning of the program, to make sure that we're delivering content that's useful and relevant to you. And also we want to make sure we're getting folks who are a good fit for the program. Our second question asks about your artistic training and experience. So we have, in all of CMAB programs, we have moved away from asking for resumes from artists and just asking a question specifically about what's your artistic training and experience. Some people may want to just copy and paste a bunch of your artist resume, if you have one, into this section. It's essentially the same thing. But because having a resume document is sometimes a barrier, sometimes feels intimidating, we want to know, what that training and experience looks like. For some people, it may mean that you were okay, so I'll give an example from my own family. So my mom is an artist, though she would never claim the title of artist. And if I were helping her to write her artistic training and experience section or her resume, one thing I would put on there that she may not think to put on a resume is that she served as the superintendent of our Sunday school from the church that I grew up in for like 15 years. And so she was designing all of the activities that all of these classes did and creating displays, et cetera, et cetera. So there are lots of examples for artistic training and experience that may not mean I have a bachelor's degree or I taught this specific thing. And all of that is relevant. We want to know, how have you engaged with learners and that sort of thing. And as I mentioned, this program's open to folks who maybe haven't had a lot of experience. So know that it's okay to be honest about that too. And we'll see if we can meet you where you are. Next, we ask for a brief statement about you and your art. This is essentially who you are, what you do, and why you do it. An artist statement isn't usually a very long statement. We allow for 3,500 characters. That's quite a lot. Sometimes an artist statement may be longer, but no, as you're crafting that, it's essentially trying to communicate to us who you are, what it is you make or do, and why. And that looks a little different for everybody. And we actually spend some time within the training helping you hone the idea of an artist statement. But for the purposes of the application, you'll get to take a stab at that on your own. Work samples, this is where you share what it is you do as an artist. Some people have lots of different disciplines they work in. And maybe you'll want to call one of us in the office and have a conversation about which work samples I should submit or that sort of thing. But you have some options here. As Melissa mentioned earlier, she's very available and our resident expert when it comes to figuring out how to get a good quality image when you save your PDF, or reducing a size, or things that I'm not even good at articulating, because we're so lucky to have somebody who makes it so I don't have to know, because Melissa knows. So you have lots of support in formatting and submitting your work samples into the application. And we know sometimes that's challenging, which is why this appears in this particular section of the application. You also have the opportunity, if you have a website or an audio video sample that's housed somewhere on the internet, instead of uploading something to the application, you can just include that URL right here in the application. This is not a requirement in addition to a work sample. This is just another way to submit that work sample. So all of those questions are what fall under the artistic merit and quality criteria, which is one of the 2 criteria that are evaluated when we look at applications to this program. And then we look at ability. So essentially your ability to complete the program, to participate and stay engaged. We ask you about the training dates. Now, of course, we know that between the program deadline of January 20th and the beginning of this program on April 7th, there are any number of things that can happen. And so, we are always working to be flexible and make things work for you. But at the time of application, we like to hope that you at least know that tentatively those dates are open. If you're applying and you have hard conflicts on 5 of those 7 dates that cannot move, then we may need to have a conversation about looking at the program again in a couple of years, or other ways we can support you. But that's really all we're asking with that question. Again, we ask about teaching experience. So this is, again, similar to what we were talking about with artistic training and experience, but specific to teaching. Maybe you've been a soccer coach, which isn't teaching art, but really gives you skills that make you a good leader in front of a classroom or that sort of thing. So again, think about those things. They may be formal, they may be informal. If you have 4 kids and you have been at home with those 4 kids until they all went off to kindergarten, put that in there, because man, you have some skills. I see Alicia nodding, and my kids are teenagers now, but like, honestly, sometimes just like I'm a parent, that can go a long way in some cases. We want to know, in the next question, we want to know about what you're interested in focusing on during the program. So again, you may work in a lot of disciplines. I encounter artists almost every day who struggle to, and we're not trying to make you commit, but struggle to like identify their discipline or their medium. And it's okay if you work in a lot. For the purposes of this program, it's helpful to at least think about where you might want to focus, so that when you're writing lesson plans or thinking about who your ideal audience might be, you can kind of focus those thoughts in a way. We're not going to make you, if you're a potter and you also like to sing and you teach voice lessons, we're not going to make you choose one. But for the purposes of course, the application form and some of the exercises in the program, it's just helpful to pick one. And then finally, we ask you to outline a lesson plan. And you'll see a few questions that show up in here, but it's just because we're really trying to break down that lesson plan format. If this is something you haven't done before, it's okay, and it may feel a little bit intimidating, but what this is really to get you started on thinking about, okay, if I'm going to teach people how to make my photo collage reference paintings, what are the steps and how I will do that? And if you've never taught before, think about like, what's my dream group to work with, or what would I like to teach, and who would that be to? So obviously we're starting with, what are you teaching? It doesn't have to be really elaborate. It could be something simple or rudimentary. It could be something that you already do. So what are you doing? And then what are students going to be doing? We want to know about who the age group would be. So in this best case scenario, or perhaps a lesson that you've taught a lot, who are the students? What do we know about their ability, where they're coming from, things like that. And then these are specifics that are really important when you're working with groups to plan and teach. How long might it take to complete the thing that you want to do? And again, we're not looking for wrong answers, but it's an exercise that helps us to see how much you're thinking about these different mechanics in making arts learning experiences happen. And then materials, of course, this is a budget consideration anytime you're teaching. What do you need to come with? What do students need, etc. And then after that, there's a section for our what's called evaluative data. This is information that we don't share with reviewers. It's just data that we're required to collect that helps us to understand who we're reaching through our programs, who's applying versus who is ultimately awarded. And then a few things that just help us sort of organize applications within our system and report to the legislature on where our applicants are coming from. So after you've gotten through all of those pieces, there's just a section where you sign your name and the date, click agree, and you can submit that application. The deadline for this program is January 20th, which is this month. I have to remind myself, it is now January. So you have a few weeks to apply. We like to hope that the application is relatively accessible and straightforward. But I will reiterate that we are here to help support you in navigating that process. So you are welcome and you are encouraged to email, to call. I'll put my contact information in the chat after I'm done sharing my screen. But we are really, really, really here to support you and help make sure that those processes go smoothly for you.